Are you looking for a way to spice up your next experience? Well, I've got you covered. In this episode, I am very excited to share with you SPICE, which is the framework that I use as the foundation of my experience design practice. Unsurprisingly, SPICE is an acronym. I just lucked out that it made such an appropriate word, so you can spice up your experiences. I'm Christy Casey, and this is Making Belief, where we're exploring the gray area between fiction and reality. So I developed the SPICE framework for designing immersive experiences, but I've now come to see it as a universal kind of foundation. So as you're listening to this, I hope you can see the breadth of application that this has and use it to make your experiences more meaningful and more powerful. So a little bit of context of where this came from. SPICE is a evolution of CROW, which you might recognize if you come from an improv background. CROW stands for character, relationship, objective, and where. To be honest, I kind of hate it. That's why I changed it. In improv, this is a tool that gives you the 4 building blocks to put a story together really quickly in an improvised situation. So when I designed SPICE, it was taking that principle of what are the components of a story and zooming out just a little bit further to be like, what are the components of an alternate reality that a participant can live and breathe and exist in fully. So what does SPICE stand for? The S is for social reinforcement, the P is for purpose, the I is for identity, the C is for circumstances, and the E is for environment. Of course, the individual words only mean so much, so let's break it down step by step. I always like to teach these in reverse order because E for environment feels more base level foundational, and social reinforcement at the top is the most powerful. So first we have E for environment, and I feel like this is where most modern immersive really lives and sits. So if you've got your Van Gogh experiences, your Punch Drunk, your anything that's kind of like exploratory, immersive today is very focused on environment. And environment is very powerful. There's an experiment that I always like to reference in talking about the power of environment, where the experimenters designed this negotiation task for the participants, and they put them in a room. And in this room, for some participants, there was a backpack and some pencils. And for other participants, there was a briefcase. And they found in this research that when there was a briefcase instead of a backpack, the participants were more businesslike, more calculated in the way that they played this negotiation. So they were primed by an object, a single object in this room, to behave different. So the objects in an environment have this power to not just shift what it looks like or feels like, but how people behave in the space. So that's E for environment. So next we have C, which in this case is not for cookie. It is for circumstances. What is happening in this present moment? So when you're designing for circumstances, you can and should consider both story world circumstances or like anything that's in the meta narrative of your piece, and or if you don't have that, the experiences that your guests are coming from. Perhaps they're on a date, or maybe they're exploring on vacation, or maybe it's a birthday. You can design your experience for those kinds of given guest circumstances if you want to offer a birthday treat or have a special experience for couples that draws them in. In Spirit of the Torch, which was a show that we did with the deep dive, the circumstances for all of the participants and the performers was that the characters were coming together for a reunion of past campers that all won the Torchbearer Award. And so that is what they were coming in with, and they were given that information. So circumstances are anything that is relevant to the present moment that is affecting the situation. Okay, after C, let me spell backwards, is I. I for identity. And identity is really about like how your guest sees themselves and their relationship to either the narrative or the experience. So, Spirit of the Torch example, we gave every one of our participants an identity that was specific to their character. Like, they each had a character. One of them was in a love triangle, another one was an aspiring director, another one was like the cool girl back in camp days, etc., etc. But they also had an identity as a previous camper at this camp who won the Spirit of the Torch award. So that automatically gives them this group identity in addition to a personal identity that hugely shaped the way they played and approached the experience. Everyone is also coming in with their like real world identity. And in Spirit of the Torch, we placed people in those in-world roles based on what we saw of their real life identity. But if we're going to zoom that out to an experience that's less narrative, I think it's really significant to look at how do your guests identify? Do they identify as adventurers or do they identify as shy? And how do you design for the various types of participants and how they're approaching the space based on how they see themselves? And how can you maybe transform the way that they see themselves through the experience? One useful tool to look at for this might be the skimmers, swimmers, divers model that a lot of experienced designers use to design how various levels of engagement are met in an experience. So if someone's just like kind of wanting to go through and have a light experience, what did they get versus someone who's going to dig in a little bit deeper, and then someone who's like all in and ready. So that's identity. And then we have P, which is purpose. Purpose is like the core tenet of Priya Parker's work, who I adore. If you have not read The Art of Gathering, required reading for anyone who designs immersive experiences, but particularly anyone who designs events and experiences where people are connecting on a deeper level. Purpose is really that key that makes an experience go from entertainment to something that is meaningful and lasting and can impact. To this day, I think my favorite experience that I've done as a guest was at Peaky Blinders. I, at some point in the evening, befriended Grace, who's Tommy's lover, future wife. Anyway, they shouldn't really be together, but they're like having this moment, and we were enlisted to like help pass along these messages, but also just to like befriend her. And I really felt like I was given the identity of her friend and the purpose of helping my friend through this really difficult situation where there's a pregnancy, and more than that, a pregnancy through infidelity. And in the end of that experience, my favorite moment where Tommy was like, "Thank you so much to Christina," which is my alter ego for most immersive experiences, who helped us find our love again, and we want you to sing at our wedding. And that was just such a special moment because I felt like I actually did something and had a reason to act, but also like something came out of my action in the story. Which brings me to social reinforcement. That giving of purpose wouldn't have been possible without social reinforcement from the characters. Social reinforcement, as is self-explanatory, is all of the ways that the people in the space reinforce the energy, the culture, the way the space feels. So in that show, it was Grace looking at me and sincerely asking me questions about her relationship in the way that she would approach a friend, and then continuing to treat me that way. An example of bad social reinforcement, I went to a show where, first of all, they didn't tell us it was a wedding in advance. I showed up wearing all white. And then both the bride and the groom were like, "Oh, how do you know the other person?" And there was no way for them, the actors, to know if I had already encountered the other character. But I just felt so like, okay, I'm supposed to be a guest at this wedding. I showed up wearing white because I didn't know I was going to be a guest at a wedding until I got here. And now both the bride and the groom don't know me. So what am I doing here? And it just like really kind of diminished the world. A better way that they could have done that would be to greet you warmly, to say, I'm so glad to see you again. It doesn't take a lot to give someone the impression that there's familiarity. They don't need to know your name. You don't use your name in every encounter. They just need to know that they know you. And a sense of familiarity is not necessary in every circumstance, but if it is called for in your show, consistently treat it like that and don't break the world. The best example that I like to give to demonstrate how social reinforcement is more powerful than environment is to compare a wedding to a funeral. Both of those events are set in the same space, traditionally. I mean, depends on your tradition, but let's assume both a wedding and a funeral take place at a church. Both a wedding and a funeral would have guests that are family and friends. Both a wedding and a funeral would have flowers. There are a few environmental differences, like a casket versus boutonnieres or whatever. But if you were a stranger accidentally walking in off the street into a church, you would pretty immediately know whether it was a wedding or a funeral based on the energy with which the people are approaching the space. Is it joyful or is it somber? And that energy can be felt before you see any of the other signs. Similarly, if something happens to contradict the energy of, let's continue with this example, a wedding, like say the ex shows up, it's going to shift the energy pretty quickly, and that energy shift is far more powerful than any of the decorations or the words or anything else that's in that space. That X coming is now a change in circumstances, but what makes those circumstances feel real is the social reinforcement of that. So that is spice. Now, when I'm using this framework, I don't always go in a specific order. Usually I start with, what do I already know? What's certain about this experience? I am designing an experience that's set in a specific environment, or I have this specific set of circumstances for these people who are coming together for a business thing, and like I have to design around the circumstances, or it's a event for people who are new mothers, and so I'm designing around this identity. Whatever it may be, you take the things that are already given, and then you go and you fill in the rest to make it active and transformative and really bring people into the world that you want them to be in. I feel like there's so much that I didn't cover. So eventually I might make an updated version of this, but for now I'm going to pause there. I will continue to use this acronym throughout my videos, and I'll probably be referencing it quite a lot. So you'll, in the future, see lots of examples of how this can be applied. Please drop any questions in the comments. I would love to continue to hone and clarify how I explain this, how I teach this, and I'd love to see it used and adopted widely. It has been a really useful tool for me, and I hope it becomes a really useful tool for you as well. I've made a little worksheet for you. It's nothing fancy, it's pretty straightforward, but it's free and it's linked below. And I really hope that it helps you adopt this tool and use it for whatever kind of experiences and events that you're designing, and really make them active and personal, and take people on a journey and bring people into a world that's designed with intention. And that's really the goal here, is to build intentionally designed worlds, because experiences are worlds. They're little like micro realities. And that's what this is for. If you enjoy this, hit that like button, click subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos, and so it means a lot to me when you engage, and especially when you leave a comment and tell me what resonates with you. As always, anything I've referenced throughout the video is linked in the description below, so go ahead and check out those resources. And while you're at it, check out some of the other videos that I've posted. On this channel, I'll post about experience design and also the nature of belief. So if either of those things is exciting to you, you'll love what I make. Once again, I'm Christy Casey, and I'm here to remind you that we are all making belief. See you in the next one.